Hey guys, in this episode of Flip the Switch, we talk to David Brennan, who's a two-time serial entrepreneur, ultra runner. David has come from losing 65 pounds in his weight loss journey to excelling and running two successful businesses and on the verge of raising a huge capital round for one of his leading AI software companies. In this episode, David and I talk about how one invitation changed the trajectory of his life over the last 3 years. David was 240 pounds, about 70 pounds overweight, smoking, non-active, felt old, achy, unmotivated, no real desire other than to get healthy and fit, other than kind of be successful, and that wasn't happening on all cylinders for him. David was invited on a hike, and the rest is history. In this episode, you're going to find out how he went from 240 pounds down to a lean 170 and running ultra marathons multiple times in a year. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you haven't already, please hit the like button and give us some comments at the end. Let us know what you'd like to see more of or what you enjoyed most about this episode. Thanks for following. So the goal today, man, I just want to have a conversation with you. I've got a couple of questions, but really I want to give you a better chance to tell your story. I've had more experience, so I really want to just kind of open it up. Before we kind of dive into your achievements and your insights, I'd really love the audience to kind of get to know you better. So a good place that I like to start is if you could kind of take us back to where it all began for you. Tell us a bit about kind of where you're from, what sparked that entrepreneurial spirit of yours, and eventually leading into your passion for running and how that became a pivotal part of your life. So that's kind of where I'd like to start, if that's okay with you.
That's perfect. Funnily enough, I've been practicing this lots because we're in the middle of a seed round. So the origin story is pretty tight these days. I grew up in the Yukon Territory, northern Canada by Alaska, and came from a very entrepreneurial family. My parents had multiple companies when I was a kid, and I remember one of those pivotal moments where I was about 15 years old with my dad at the counter selling gold to the American tourists and able to keep up. And I think that's when I probably realized that I had a significant ability to sell. And then life, just kind of kept driving me towards business. Went to first semester of college and took business administration. Really didn't like school back then. Didn't know why it was such a challenge for me, which kind of comes clearer as you get a little older. Back in those days, they didn't really catch things like ADHD and that type of stuff. They just kind of, went over their heads. And so, I went and traveled, and then I started a couple companies and ended up, I was working in Alberta as a consultant, and I was about like 35 years old, pretty disappointed in where I had been able to achieve in my business. And so went back to school, got my MBA, and in that process, that's when I got into software. That's when I started Safe Devolution. And again, just stayed kind of, I was in that oil and gas space, but things really started to change for me in 2019, I'll say, like December 2019. I came back to Canada and went full-time into software. And that was the beginning of my journey. It was interesting times because it was just coming into COVID. And I didn't know it was coming into COVID at the time, but I got back to Canada, was in working full-time in the office for about 2 months, and COVID hit, and the world kind of went crashing down. And I made it till about middle of 2020 in the summer, and decided that I was going to end a 10-year relationship, and I needed to make some big changes in my life, and that kind of led to my fitness and all that good stuff. I was super lucky because in 2021, I had been in SAS Academy, Dan Martell's coaching program, for about a year, and he moved to Kelowna and started a founder's hike. And when that happened and I started hiking with that group of people, that was when my trajectory, I would say, changed significantly. And I think, okay, so here's the timeline. Started hiking on that hike on January 2021. At that point, I was about 240 pounds.
Okay.
I was not in very good shape. I had been sitting for probably 10 years in different desk jobs. And I just got around that group of people that had figured out that exercise, activity, and performance in business really go hand in hand. And so I was on that hike. I think I was on it maybe 5 times, and a person looked at me and said, "Hey, do you want to run a half marathon?" And I was like, yeah, I'd always wanted to, like, I had a book. It had a book for like 20 years, Dane.
You're like, no lukewarm, man. I'm crossing the street. Let's go.
Yeah. And I had this book on running a marathon for 20 years on how to do it. And I was like, you got to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I said yes. And, you know, the first run, oh my God, it was like I ran 3 kilometers in 30 minutes. And so if you were to go for a brisk walk right now, that would be about the same speed. And so it was really cool because it took me 4 months, but I ran my first half marathon. And I actually got to run it with Dan and a bunch of other people. And that really solidified for me that I could run and that it was really good for me as a human being. And so that's kind of led to now I kind of went like road, and then I went trail running, did my first like 18K trail run in 2022. And then last year in 2023, I ran 2 50K mountain ultras, which are like 8 to 10 hour runs for me. I'm not fast. I run slow. But, you know, those really changed me and what I feel I can accomplish in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's such a drastic change. I want to go back to something before. So, like, before you found the hiking club and Dan Martell and you got around the right group of guys, like, you had noticed this degression kind of over time from 25 to 35, you said, right? Like, there was a time, 10 years, leading up to maybe that moment with the Founders Club, like that last year. What was like your typical day or your typical like routine, like your habits?
I mean, I've always worked really long hours. So I would do, you know, come in and start working at 6:30 in the morning and then finish up at 7, 8 o'clock at night. And so
you had the discipline.
Oh, I could work. I just never realized how important it was to look after yourself physically. And so I think the decline for me was just like my body was so sore. My back was sore. You know, I was like, I felt old in my body. And it was really quite, it was sad, dude. I was like 42 years old and I felt like I was, you know what I mean? Like knees hurt, back hurt, you know, your neck would pop out, your back would, you know, and it was just like, it's not where you should be at that age at all.
Yeah. Yeah. 42 is the magic number for me too. It was like, why? What is all this achiness? And, you know, every time I did something that was somewhat active. So you had a drastic change, right? So you had the discipline, which I think is super important because you had the drive. You were just applying it in only one lane, really, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of that burnout that a lot of us guys go through, especially 25 to 35, because we're trying to get to a certain place financially, from a family standpoint, right? But then all of a sudden, all the red lights start going off, like you're overheating. So you have now this kind of pivotal moment where you step into a good group of people, somewhat of a community. One gentleman mentions one thing to you and it kind of, oh yeah, all right, yeah, let's kind of level up here. You step into something much bigger than probably you thought it was initially. But how did your discipline then kind of start to turn? Like how did running being introduced to you as a business owner to then start to change the way that you got up in the morning or the way that you went to bed at night? Like how did it start to incorporate into your lifestyle? Because I know so many people that go for a run once in a blue moon. And it's like there's never that deep connection like I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah, I'll say there was a couple things that happened and I'm, you know, it's always like this, right? There's always like ups and downs. And I think for me, what I find is physical exercise is the first thing that goes when you get, like, if I'm full into work mode, the first thing that seems to come off is physical exercise. So I had to really change my connection to that. And that was like in early stages. And what I kind of realized is that if I didn't do it, then my body was like, and my mind even more so, was really affected. Like to the point now, Dane, where my team says, have you eaten yet? And if I say yes, then they ask me if I've run, and they tell me to go run.
They go hand in hand? Yeah,
because like those are the two things that directly affect me as a human being.
Yeah.
So I was able to really like early days was a challenge because I kind of did those first races and I was trying to solidify it in my identity, where it was like part of who I am. And that was really challenging in the beginning because it was like, you're kind of just like holding on to it as best you can so that it doesn't slip away. So I think the drive really helps me to be able to do that stuff. But then it's like putting systems in place, like having a race, having a goal, having people that, can keep you accountable. Yeah. Like, Dan, well, one of the biggest things that really kept me going was the fact that we were both training for races together. And also, what a better way to go and spend Saturday and get to hang out with somebody you can talk about business, you can talk about life, you can talk about spirituality with. The only way I could do that is if I could run.
Yeah. So you had the skill, you get the skill in place into the routine to get around the people you wanted to be around.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize because we overlooked it, but where did you start weight-wise and where are you now?
I started at probably 240, maybe 238, 240, somewhere in there, pretty high. And now I'm about.
That's awesome. And that's kind of your baseline, right? You feel that's where you feel.
I go like 184 to 194, depending. I don't have a scale, so I know I can just kind of look at myself and see where I'm at. Yeah. When I get a little too skinny, I start eating more and just manage it,
Yeah. Yeah, you look great, man. We'll show people some before pictures that I'll grab from you that we'll put up. All right, so now we're kind of into the skill. I want people to kind of realize that there's a process of ramping up. You can kind of go. It's not as binary as like, yes, you do make this decision, but you slowly start to put the pieces together and how fitness fits into the routine. And it comes from like conscious moments, like you were saying, like, I know I need to change. I don't feel good. I want to go here. These are the people that have it. That's right now, health and exercise kind of, it's an avenue that can get me there. So every day you kind of show up. What does a typical day now look like for you from running the business, right? And maintaining your health and fitness and maintaining your mental health and kind of being the guide and the leader for other people? Because those are a lot of different hats, and I'm sure each of them have a system.
Yeah, well, I'm running 2 software companies right now, so that always seems to amaze people. They're like, how do you do that? Well, you put systems in place. You have amazing people. And so I get up most days at about 5:30. That's changed. I used to get up at 5, but that's kind of changed a bit with being in San Francisco and doing a lot more networking late at night. I still need to get my sleep. So I sleep to about 5:45, get up, make my coffee, I work from about 6:30 till 9 o'clock, which is my time to work on stuff. Nobody interrupts that. And then once that's done, then I jump into a daily huddle with �𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐒, a daily huddle with Safety Evolution, and just go through what's going on with each of the teams, and then just manage it out. And usually I do my run around 11 till 1 o'clock in the day, because what I find happens is it's a really good reset for me.
Yep.
So that I have energy throughout the rest of the day. And if I don't get it, then I'll get it around 2:30, 3 o'clock and do my run then. But I try and squeeze it in Usually it's scheduled, but lately, because we're in a little bit of fluctuation, I've just kind of like go and run when I have the time. But I'm doing probably about 8 hours of running a week now. So 4 days in the week, and then I run Saturdays on my long runs, because I have a race here on April 27th in Sacramento.
Nice. 50K?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'll tell you about that, why I'm doing that in a little bit,
tell me.
because that's a fun adventure. So there's this really, really cool race. So this kind of like goes into like creating the identity, right? I find for me, this needs to be, it's like saying I'm a rugby player or a soccer player, right? Like you play soccer then, and then it's just a natural thing that you go and do. So running for me and digging into that ultra marathon identity means that now I'm looking for adventures around ultra marathons. And so there's this really, really cool race, the UTMB in Chamonix, France. It's in Mont Blanc. And so they do it once a year, and there's a whole series around this. And so the only way you can race in this race is if you get running stones, and the more stones you get, the better your chances of actually being able to race in it. So this race in April is my first race to get running stones. And so I think it will take me probably about 2 years to be able to get to run in this race in France. But this is my cool adventure I get to go on around running.
That's awesome.
And so that's, I think, a really interesting change, right? Because it's like, if you don't have really good reasons that keep you doing it, it's going to drop off because it's not important. So you have to kind of put guardrails on your life. You have to, you have to put systems in place, guardrail, whatever you want, that keep you doing those things. That's the biggest thing I've learned about fitness, because I can work all day. That's not a problem. But making the time and putting that stuff in place has made it actually significantly better for me, because now I don't have 14 hours a day to work. Now I have to divide my day up, and I have to get better at managing systems and be more productive. And I think that was probably the biggest shift, Dane, of all the things that running did to me, is because now, instead of being flat out running one company, I have things that I do that are very important for what I have to do. And then the rest of it, I don't do it. That's other people's jobs. So it makes you decide what's important and prioritize those things in your life.
I mean, 100%. I mean, anytime you start to really get older and you realize there's less time in a day and I've got to maximize it, it's like you've got to have the systems, you've got to have the guardrails, you need to know how to offset things, and as Dan likes to say, buy back your time. And as you do that, right, like you then free up time to stay in your high flying zone. But I'm sure, man, you as entrepreneur, one company is super tough, two companies is super tough. I do it, and so I know it's could be chaotic at times. But the training and the pushing and the mental that you have to go through the training when you get down to silo a business or silo an assignment to say, okay, this is what I have to do. It's like that mindset kicks in, like, okay, I just got to focus, right? And you're able to do that. So because you've been doing that now for some time, can you tell us about maybe a major challenge you faced in business and or like during a race, and kind of how you push through that to reach the goal? So
I have this interesting thing that happens to me around 35 to 40 kilometers in. My knee starts to really hurt. I'm trying to work on that because I think it's just mileage. Like, I think I just have to, it's just about getting your body used to it.
Yeah.
But I know in my first race, like, I can show you a video, but you can see me, like, I'm just like barely holding on. I'm just like kind of doing a hobble run down the thing. And I think I was like the third to last person to finish the race. And so that was the Diaz Vista. And that was super, super challenging because, you know, being your first race, you go into it. I felt so good. 25 kilometers in, I was on fire. I was just hauling. And went too fast, legs blew up, right? And so then you're hiking you've got 25 kilometers left, and I was doing good, and then the rain came. And so by the time I hit aid station 5, I had mild hypothermia, just like my teeth are just jackhammering. And my knee was like
Killing.
pretty much killing. And I knew this isn't like a road, right? This is where you're climbing over, 18-inch rocks and up and down mountains. And I just was like, just realized that if I didn't keep going, I don't know where that mindset comes in me, but there's just no quit. Like the idea, I remember being so cold and they're like, do you want to stop? I'm like, no, you'll carry me off this thing before I stop. But I will tell you, it's such an interesting thing because when you go through the line, like lots of people are like, oh, what was your time? I was like, I was happy I finished. Like I got over the line. I wasn't worried about the time.
I'm here. I'm alive.
I made it. I was like, yeah. And so that was like one of the first times I realized that my knee kind of went like that.
Yeah.
But I will say the second race, there was like this moment it was one of the most challenging things. I was like 10 hours in, and the last 2 kilometers on this race is just on a flat road coming in. And I remember I was like running, my knee hurt, and I was just like, I had this moment where I was so filled with gratitude because of being able to do it. And that was like one of those incredible moments for me where I was like, this is my thing, like this is where I can just be me. I don't have to put it on for anybody. I just go and grind. So
yeah, and there's peace in that. I mean, do you what do you tap into when you're going and like your knees are screaming, your body's free, like where do you go mentally? Like outside of I don't want to quit, like is it that place of like I know there's reward on the other side? Like you've recognized that through that first race, sometimes like when you get to the other side and you have that emotional connection, like I did it, right? Like second race, you tap into that I did it moment of like, wait a minute, I remember how good that felt. Like, do you have that kind of mechanism in place where 35 kilometers in, you recognize the pain starts kicking up, the mind starts talking to you, start saying, hey, take it easy. We don't really need to be pushing this hard. Like we all have those talks, right? Or at least I do every morning on the cardio machine. It's like, where do you go? Do you have a place that you go to or a strategy that you kind of pull from that just kind of zones out? Do you start thinking about work? Do you start thinking about goals? Do you start enjoying the pain? Like, what's that for you?
For me, it's a place of gratefulness. I think lots of times, like just being in the moment, doing it, taking it in and appreciating it instead of like trying to remove yourself from the experience, I think is how I do it. Like I just
Embrace it.
Yeah, I embrace it. I love it. Like it's funny for me because I have these adventures on the race that it seems like very few people have. Like my first race I ran, I talked to the person that was the very first race director for 2 hours. And she was 73 years old running with me. And she beat me by 2 hours, just for the record, just to put it in perspective. But it was awesome. Yeah, she told me, like, she just gave me like the story and all like how they created it. And so on the, like, it was just incredible. And I had all kinds of conversations like that. So for me, I think there's this thing where I just really enjoy it. Like I just enjoy being in the time with people. Sometimes you can help a lot of people in those races too by talking to them because they're in a place where they, like, believe me, I think it helps that I talk because it keeps me from being too deep in my head. But I think like you can, I remember, okay, so the second race, I'm running up this 7-kilometer hill with this guy. He's from Australia. His name's Phil. And I'm just talking away. Well, he'd run 50 miles the day before, so he was doing a 50K. So I got him up that hill and I went booting off. And about 4 hours later, this Australian lady passes me and she goes, hey, I started talking to her and she goes, "Oh, you're Dave. You literally saved Phil on that hill. He wanted to quit the whole way. And he said, you just talked him the whole way up the hill." And so I think those are the really cool experiences that make me love it. And it also, that's like in that moment of being there with other people is very, makes it feel different. I don't like, you hear some people, they're like, "Oh, I get in the pain cave and I just like start chiseling out." Well, first of all, I'm running 50K, so I don't think you really get in that spot that far. But I think there's something to be said about being grateful and just experiencing it that really allows you to, and not to be that hard, I'll say.
To mean have more grace with yourself?
Yeah, just enjoy it. Like, because I think there's like this, sometimes people find dark energy to drive them. Yeah. But you can find gratefulness, you can find love, you can find all these things that are much better energy source. They don't drain you nearly as much. Yeah. So that's where I try and go.
Yeah, that's phenomenal, man. And I think there's an EQ that happens with that, right? Like there are some people that aren't there yet. Like I know in the beginning of my journey, I had to use kind of pain to just kind of keep driving myself. But then when you fast forward 3 years later, I cried a lot. And it was tears of gratitude that, man, I can't believe I stuck through it. I can't believe I just literally put my head down for 3 years and kept going because I was just going, I was digging a hole every day. You know, I had that pain mentality of like, you're just going to go, you're going to put yourself through this. And then it became a passion, a love, a routine like you, right? And now I'm on the other side of that. And pain doesn't drive me to work out. It's gratitude. It's all gratitude. And the gratitude is like probably, well, let me ask you, what are you most grateful for? Like when you sit back and say, like, I'm just grateful, like, where does that come from?
Well, I'll say, I'm very grateful to be able to do what I do. Like, I mean, I think I've been on an incredible journey, and I feel very lucky to have gone on it. And I don't mean it's been good the whole time, but I think it's been pretty spectacular. And I think it's like, I just have millions of, like, I look back, I'm thankful for the people that have helped, the people that have mentored me, the conversations, just being able to have been lucky enough to find running, to find business, to be able to be doing what I'm passionate about. I think it's really interesting once you get into a place where you think about what you're grateful for on a regular basis. It changes your mind significantly. Like I remember about 4 years ago, I was listening to this guy talk, and he said, I think it's like 80% or 90% of the things that you think about today, you thought about yesterday. So it doesn't take very long for you to significantly change the way you think, right? If you are always thinking about the negative, or always thinking about what's going wrong, then that becomes this pattern that your mind gets into. You can change it pretty quick if you just get intentional and you just like, hey, I want to think about today before I go to bed. I'm going to think about what I'm grateful for. What happened today that I really loved? What did I learn from? You know, and now you're setting yourself up to be able to change the way that you think. So from that standpoint, I think I feel blessed that I've been able to have a grateful mindset. I don't know how, like, sometimes I think it's luck, Dane, that we get the experiences. Sometimes I think it's because we work hard for them. I mean, it's life. I feel incredibly blessed to have been given the opportunities to be where I'm at right now.
Yeah. So, well, I'm super happy for you, because it's like, it's serendipitous to some degree. Like people that I found on a journey, there's just kind of one moment where it just leads to a decision, and that decision leads to an activity, and that activity kind of sparks a little bit of a fire, and there's like, hey, wait a minute, what is this, right? But if
think about that, Dane. If Dan hadn't moved, to Kelowna, that founder's hike wouldn't have started, and that whole journey, this journey would have been different. So yes, I had to go out to do that founder's hike, but sometimes there's just these moments where a door opens that can significantly impact the trajectory of your life.
If you say yes.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said yes. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, that said no to that hike from Dan, right? And let's say that didn't happen. Let's say you didn't have, right, the wherewithal to say, yeah, I'm going to do this hike. You know, like, let's go for it. Where do you think you are today?
Wow. Not living in San Francisco, running an AI company, I can tell you that much.
Right?
Training for ultra marathons. I promise you that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Being around some of the smartest people in the world, you know, going out and telling your story. So when did you move to San Francisco?
I moved here in November. So I had been in September. So I was supposed to be married here in about 2 weeks, but that relationship ended and we decided to go our separate ways. And so that was in September. Within a week, the team said, hey, you should, you know, because 𝐎𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑 was blowing up, you should really move to San Francisco. That's where everybody's going for this. And I was like, I shouldn't I? And so I decided that day I was moving to San Francisco. And so again, this is like, you know, when the door opens, you have to be prepared to take it. Like, I think there's two things, my biggest two takeaways in the last 12 months. We as human beings make up reasons, or we have these very logical reasons for not doing stuff, which are actually us protecting ourselves from being able to achieve the things that we should do. Mm-hmm. And the second thing, that I realized is that if you want to really play the game, you have to play all out. And so that means you have to play. You can't go 20%, right? It's like you have to go all in, and that means you have to sacrifice. You have to make bold choices, and you have to get over the things that you are afraid of, and just go through them. It's a muscle. So this is the takeaway. Anything that you are afraid of or you don't think you're good at, the only reason that's the case is because you haven't done it enough times to get good at it. So just start doing it and watch. Within 3 months, you'll go from being 240 pounds to being able to run 21 kilometers. That's crazy. Simple.
Just in 90 days.
Yeah.
You know, it's so far for some people, but people that have been in it, it's like, so it's literally 1 quarter. It's like, it's so rewarding.
You could be a public speaker in 1 quarter if you want. Yeah. You can do
got to get the reps in.
Yeah, just go put the reps in. Start. But we don't because we're afraid of it, right? Mm-hmm. We don't because of fear, or that's not what I do. That's not me. I'm an introvert. You know, like all the stupid stuff that we say about ourselves to keep us from doing and being the human being that we should be.
100%. So when you think about that, like play that out for a minute. If you didn't start training, do you think you would have that mindset? Right? Do you think
Absolutely
the energy
not.
that you're carrying? Yeah. No. It's the vibration, right? Like I always tell people, and I've recognized, like when you start training, you elevate your vibration for the planet, for the people around you. And that's when the magic happens for things like you, in a relationship, an invite, a call, an inbound, like you, because you've aligned yourself, from what I've noticed, like to the higher level. So I've invited David on because I've seen him over the last 8-9 months, and his vibration just keeps rising, right? Like he's completing races. He's meeting investors. He's moving to San Francisco. He's wining and dining with some of the biggest VCs out there. Like all of that comes, David, from your movement, right? Like your movement created that belief in, well, if I can do this, I can do this. All right.
Yeah.
And there's some level of pride, and I do this. Yeah, I get up every day and I put myself through this and I enjoy it.
And it builds your self-worth, Dane. I think that's the part I think
Yeah.
all of these things are like, there's no one, but they all just start to stack, right? They just stack and stack and stack, and you run, you talk, your vibration comes up, it opens doors, you get cemented into this new place, and you just keep growing. And I think that's the biggest thing. You need you need to be a balanced human being. Exercise, love, family, everything, to be the version of yourself that you could be, the best version.
Yep. So you've got this great 2 software companies. Give us a little bit of context around the difference between each of them. What do they do?
Safety Evolution is a SaaS, so it's safety management software for construction and oil and gas service companies. So think about like your workers in the field, they would usually have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. So now they can do it online through the app. So it makes life significantly easier for them and their safety management team. So that's been running for about 8 years. A great company, and I'm loving growing that. It grows about like 40% year over year.
Nice.
And so that's the first one. And then �𝐓𝐇𝐄 is your AI co-pilot, your SaaS co-pilot. And so it was born from us trying to find tools to put into Safety Evolution to be able to automate it and use AI to operate it. And we realized after about 4 months of looking that there was nothing available. And I was out for a run, funnily enough, and had the idea. And it just was like, I'm going to start a company and build this. And so, in the beginning, it was just like a simple idea. We went to market, checked, and so to see who wanted it. SaaS companies seemed to be the ones that had the biggest challenges. So you want to talk about how fast you can go when you have motion. This is amazing. So May 26th, I had the idea for the company, or had the idea. Okay. We did 3 months of market research because that was one of the biggest things I learned in running software companies. Make sure you understand the market. Make sure you understand who wants it and how hungry they are. Started building in September 10th, launched live with 10 beta companies on November 20th. So I moved to San Francisco on November 16th. And then from November 20th till now, which is December, so 3 months, we have, we're about halfway through building V2, which is your SaaS Copilot. So it's like connected to HubSpot, ClickUp, QBO, all of your management softwares. It's aggregating the data into one source of truth, and then we're running it through specialists to be able to give you insights, recommendations, and we'll be looking at automations in your command center. And so that's being built. We have 40 companies on our wait list, which we opened up on January 10th, and we'll go live in April, and we're in the middle of a seed round. So when you get momentum and you start to go, it just explodes.
Yeah. And you feel prepared for it. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, we're running
yourself every day, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I would never have the confidence to go, you think about that, going back to what we were saying about Dave, January 2020, 2021, that human being before I started running. Yeah. I remember I was like really scared going to that hike, right? I didn't know if I could go up the hill. Like Dan was training for triathlons and these, you know what I mean? And you're like, you have full imposter syndrome. You're like, why would they even want to talk to me? Who am I? I'm just like some, hit kid from the Yukon. Yep. Yeah. And now you're here in San Francisco. Like I have 250 people coming to my networking event in a week and a half from now. Because when I landed in San Francisco, I realized there was a void. And I said, I'm going to start a massive network of companies here so that everybody can actually have San Francisco the way that everybody talked about it 10 years ago.
That's awesome.
So I'm loving it. It's fun.
You've got, I mean, that's impressive. You got this wait list going. So who's the buyer? Who does this software who benefits from this software, this solution, this AI solution?
So we're selling to SaaS, I'll say C-suite in SaaS companies that have hit product market fit and are looking to scale and grow. So you need to be, the reason why we say product market fit is because you need to have processes in place and systems in place so that we can actually start gathering the data. If you don't have the data and you don't, then we can't help. So you could get, like, maybe if you were 500K ARR, if you had like a pretty decent understanding and systems in place. But otherwise, it's around product market fit. And then we're using it to like look at holistically the whole company and being able to tell you what's happening. So how's marketing working, how it's flowing into sales, how that's working through customer success, churn rates, financials, contract values, everything together. And so we're just using all that experience that we gathered in running SaaS companies, and we're building AI specialists to be able to assist you in understanding that data. Like, I think one of the hardest things that a lot of SaaS founders and teams have in running and making good decisions is access to the data, right? Like, if I want to go and see what's happening in my sales pipeline, I got to literally go and probably spend 40, 50 hours digging in and looking at deals and seeing why they're stopping. And it's a huge amount of work to even be able to understand what's going on. Where AI is incredibly good at this, because all that data is there, or all the information is there. You just gather it into one place, run your specialists on it, and it can go through what would take me 40 hours to do, can do it in 5 minutes.
So your client, your prospect, the ideal prospect is what, 500K ARR and above? Kind of need to be there, where you've recognized they've got systems in place enough to support where you can add some value? Or do you think it's
I would think it's $1 million, to be honest. It's $1 million to $20 million in ARR is what we're looking at in this version.
Where you can come in and really add value.
Yeah.
That's great. So you got, you probably have a big year set up. What has you most excited about kind of the rest of this year? Outside of the race, because that's a big one.
I've got 2 races, so I'm excited about that. I am really excited about 𝐎𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐒 and where we're going to go with that. I love AI, and I love like that space at the moment. So that's very exciting to me. Personally, I am buying myself a Land Rover so that I can go doing some off. I'll say, I might become a digital nomad for a couple months this year, just for the fun of it. Put my Starlink on the top of my rig and just go and enjoy myself. I'm trying to be more balanced, Dane, in like, and like, here, I'll give you this. I could sit in one spot and go to an office every day, but I don't have to. So why should I? Why can't I have a more balanced life where I can go adventure and I still work the same amount and I still run and I still do all these things? But I think that's really important. So I'm very excited about adding that aspect to my stack, I'll say, because I've got the physicals, I've got the exercise in, I've got the work ethic, I've got the motion that way. And now it's like adding this next level of
freedom, enjoyment, happiness,
to my world. So that's what I'm excited about.
It's so good to see, because it's like it's like the unveiling of the next level person. It always has this like, and now what's next? And now what's next? And unfortunately, like, sometimes guys don't realize that till a little later. Like, I wish from 25 to 35, I had that what's next attitude, right? Like, all right, what's next? Let's keep. I stacked a bunch of skills. I got really good at headhunting, and I stayed there for 10 years, just going deep into headhunting and just becoming, what I tried to be, the master. And that took a lot of time, right? And then when I came out of that, I was like, okay, what's next? And the health and fitness led to the ability to say, wait, I can be more. I can do more. I can serve more. I have more energy. There's more of me. So I love that, man. You're on that journey of finding yourself. There's something I wanted to go back to before, because it's like, there are a lot of men that I deal with that are getting divorced, that are in terrible relationships, that have come out of long-term relationships that weren't prosperous, and they're beaten up, right? And they're not doing well. And so some of those guys, they were on a journey, and they fell off of that journey because of a relationship and how it impacted their decisions. And it's impacted them a lot. I know we're super excited about what you were going into. You had an engagement and you kind of had this marriage, and I can only imagine that was probably a really big kick in the gut at a time where you're building a business, you're building yourself back up. That could have went all kinds of sideways, man. If you had some bad habits and fell back on some of the bad habits that I used to have, like, people start making really shitty decisions when things like that happen or come out of their world. But like you moved to a new city. Like, tell me about that, man. Like, what was your initial reaction? Did you have that thought of like FML, like now what? Or were you so confident? Like, bring somebody into that, where you were and how you received it.
Well, I'll say it's funny because I had the exact opposite experience of going backwards. I felt like the universe had just like taken me and said, you're on the wrong path. You need to go and you need to do this. This is where you're supposed to be as a human being. This is your path. And so that was, I'm not going to say it wasn't tumultuous. Don't get me wrong, but that was what my feeling was, because as soon as it ended, it was like the doors just started opening up, and the direction was so clear that this is where you have to go. This is what you need to do. And so, I also had some really good friends reach out pretty quickly and say, hey, don't let this derail you. You need to keep doing what you're doing, and you need to keep on your path. Don't come off your path. And so, when your friends reach out and make those calls almost immediately, and then doors start opening up, you just kind of naturally go into that place, I think. And I'll say I realized the size of 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐒 as a company and the opportunity. And believe it or not, I've had one of these before, but I let fear stop me from doing it. So in this one, I was like, no, I'm playing all in. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm doing this. I'm going to take this whole idea that I'm an introvert, and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to start building a massive community down here, and I'm going to just go 180% into this journey that I'm on. And so for me, it was incredibly freeing in a sense of like, I had nothing to stop me, right? That was kind of the experience.
Dude, that's awesome. And here's why I think it's awesome, because the energy, you were in that place where you were able to like receive that and move past it, right? Like, and so as men, like, I think the point here that we want to capture is like, you have to build yourself up to where you don't feel dependent on things or people or outings or substances, that you've recognized I have everything I need. And when you get emotional, it's because the gratitude of like, I'm okay with me. Right. And everything else that complements that. And then when you hit that journey, right, and you're on that elevation pad, right, it's like God. For me, it's God, but a lot of other people would be higher power. But it becomes clear as day, like who should be and who shouldn't be on the train with you. And it's your job to say, okay, I've done this before, right, and I let fear take over. That will happen again if I don't make a different decision. And along the journey, you have to cut certain people out. You have to cut certain habits and rituals and routines and things along the way, but it's because it's not serving you anymore. And it's the EQ, the awareness that you get on the journey of like, yeah, you know what? This served for the time, but it doesn't serve. What got me here won't get me there, so to speak.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the things, Dane, that I had pretty awesome people, but I had a friend say to me, and I always think this is super important. This was early on in this journey, and I was saying, you're the culmination. I said to her, I said, well, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. You are the culmination of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And I said, I want to hang out with these people that are like really amazing, and they know the same thing that I just said. So how do I get to a point where they actually hang out with me? And she said, you're looking at this outwardly. You need to turn that inside, and you need to do the work inside of you. Because when you do the work inside of you, you change and you attract. And when you're chasing things, they run away from you. When you become the energy shift, you bring things to you. And so that, I think, is my advice to every man out there. Start working on this in here. Start working on that human. Come to terms with them. Start to like them. Be okay with them. Because that's when the big shift happens. That's when things, your mindset changes. You go to gratefulness. You shift out of dark energy, right? You shift into that positive, grateful place where you're not coming from scarcity. You're coming from abundance. And I think that's the part, if I could ever push other men into, is start finding people that can help them work on their insides. Figure out who that human is.
That's a really good point. I mean, you're down this path far. Who are some of the teachers that you followed? Who are some of the books or people that really kind of got you going deeper, that you connected with, that you think other people might find interesting?
I think everybody should read The Mountain Is You.
The Mountain Is You.
The Mountain Is You. Because that is like, it's this way of, the book in short is like, teaches you all the things that you do that create the reality that you're in. Nobody else is doing it to you. You're doing it to yourself. And as soon as you get your head around that, I think that's, I think everybody should read that one. And then I think for men, because we live in this really unique, well, I'll say our generation, Dave. I think the younger people are probably in a little less of a spot, but I know that emotions were not really, like you just locked that stuff up and went, right? So that's how you can go and do this stuff. And it's not healthy. It's not how you can get to know that human being, because you need to feel emotion. You need to understand them. Brene Brown has a book called Atlas of the Heart. Mm-hmm. And it teaches you emotions, which surprisingly is very helpful. You're like, that's what that is.
Yeah.
I thought that was just anger. Yeah. No, there's all this complexity to it, and it helps you decode yourself. So I think there's not like, and then have really amazing friends. Like, man, I ran with Dan, and we talked about stuff that really like unlocked mindset, unlocked like why we do what we do. And then of course my friend Stephanie, who told me about, like, she actually is a trauma therapist and spiritual guide, and she is absolutely phenomenal. I'll give you her handles because she's absolutely spectacular. And she definitely has helped me understand a lot of stuff about why, or just how to unlock myself, I guess is a good way to go.
She's been a guide for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Self-sabotage is a big one for guys. So I'll definitely get that book. There's always something to learn. Mm-hmm. All right, Dave. So my next thing is, what do you got in terms of final advice for the guy that is watching this and is kind of stuck? They've gotten a lot here, but what's that one piece of wisdom that if you have a chance to get in their ear, what do you tell them and why?
Find something that you can do with other people that raises your energy level, and don't make it beers with your buddies at the bar. That's not raising your energy. Find something that has that's divorced from alcohol, drugs, all that stuff that raises your energy, and hook into it, and it'll change your life.
100% agreed, man. It's so important. So getting around other men has been a big piece for you. That's been like, that it's almost silent accountability. You didn't hire a coach at that point. It was just kind of like, I want to show up for you. And
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like, the one thing I've also learned, and you can hang out with some pretty spectacular people if you bring value to them in something that they need value in.
Yeah.
And so you can think outside the box. Do you need a running partner? Learn how to run. You know what I mean? Like, there's all kinds of things. So being creative, finding ways to connect with community, are like, yeah, get into that community, figure out who they are. Like right now in San Francisco, I have on my 2024 goals board, find another Dan in San Francisco, because I need somebody that I can run with and talk about this stuff. Like, just like somebody that's not afraid to talk about deep things, that's into expanding their mind. And so loves physical energy.
Yeah. It's such a different shift, man. Like, like when we're younger, it's all about the beers and talking about the girls or the sports or the career or the money, and it's just kind of what it is, Maybe it's just inherited behavior from society. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. But it's like, when you find the one or two people that are just at that next level and pull you up to it, you become then the person pulling other people up, and then you've got your soldiers alongside you for the ride, and then you always have to have that North Star. So hopefully this interview will find you your North Star, because we got a big following on LinkedIn. And I got a lot of people in San Francisco that you should know. So we'll try to find you next. I don't know if they're going to be Dan Martell, but we'll try to find a Dan Martell out there. I'll try to put the filters on the search. All right, man, this has been such a great call. I'm super grateful that you are where you are, that I got introduced to you, that we have this relationship. I love following you, man. Tell people where they can follow you on Instagram. What's your handle?
David Brennan 101 on Instagram, LinkedIn, and then David E. Brennan on Twitter. If you follow my LinkedIn, you'll see everything we're doing, because we're actually building it open with 𝐎𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐒. So every update goes there. You'll get a post every day that tells you what me and the team's doing. And that's the place. And if you want to see me run, then go on Instagram.
Yes, he does. The guy's incredible. All right, so I will share those links in this YouTube video. I'll put the company, the LinkedIn, and the Instagram, so you guys can find David when you need him. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. I know his story has inspired me, so hopefully it's inspired you. Thanks for watching.